All righty. Well, welcome everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to another edition of the Unpredictable Pipeline. In this series, we are talking to marketing leaders who have been navigating their teams, their markets, their industries, their companies through the unpredictable nature of what 2020 has meant for us today. Very excited to have Sydney Sloan. She's the CMO at SalesLoft. And Sydney, thanks for joining us. I know this is your second ever LinkedIn Live.
Yeah, this is so exciting. Hi, Matt.
Welcome,
world.
Hello, world. That's right. So it is, what is it? We got, what is it, 1:30 on the West Coast here. It's 4:30. Our counterparts on the East Coast are already drinking.
They're happy. Sure.
Exactly. Well, thanks for doing this. And I know we've been covering a lot of ground in this series. And the place where I think we might want to start here is, we've talked a lot about the transition to digital and all the just changes in our go-to-market strategies. But let's talk about the internal shift here. Because I know for SalesLoft, you guys have such an amazing culture. I think you're number 7 best places to work. It's been a focus from the top down from the beginning for the company. All of a sudden you go completely work from home, and that presents its challenges for a company that hadn't done that before. So for a company that focuses so much on culture and values, what did that mean come March when you were sort of all forced to go home for a while?
Well, the good news is we all work in SalesLoft. So the transition in terms of the day-to-day work at the very beginning wasn't hard. And we didn't realize how long this was going to last. So I would say that the initial phase was very much, we did a test day. Gosh, it's so long ago, I've almost forgotten. We just did a test day on a Friday, and then we never came back.
Okay.
So the test was the first one. So we had people set up and make sure that they had their own infrastructure and the right tools. And so I think that part was easy. What started to get hard was a month in, and it was all of a sudden, we don't know when we're coming back and what's going on in this world. And so we've always been a very transparent leadership team, and frequent and honest communication and was already part of our DNA, but we increased that even. So we went to weekly all hands, and we're really transparent about what we were seeing in the market and how that might impact us as a company, and what we were hearing. We did surveys, what we were hearing from our teams and trying to address that. So at that very beginning stage, it was a quick transition, and then oh my gosh, what's going on? And just lots and lots of communication.
Well, unless someone on your leadership team is literally 125 years old, there's no precedent for this. We don't know how to navigate through a global pandemic. So, what were some of those early decisions? How did you decide sort of how to continue to operate? There was a moment I remember back mid-March where is it still ethical to sell right now? Maybe in a couple of weeks, but it was a little dicey for a while. What were some of those conversations like? And how do you as an organization go back to your values to help decide what's the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think the, some of our values are bias to action, glass half full, team over self. We use those in our day-to-day vernacular. And so those do get tested. And so how do you help other teams? How do you help them perform? After I think that with the first month, we're done with happy hours. We've got to get more creative. And so how different teams were sharing what they were doing in terms of team collaboration and motivation, frankly. We were all struggling. Those of us that had kids, people that had roommates, and who's going to work where. And so we took a moment and was okay, let's, what we did was it was one of my favorite all hands, because we decided to give a rest day, and Google had started that. I think they were the first ones to do it. And so coming into the long weekend in May, it was okay, well, we're going to do a rest day, but our head of people operations was but wait, there's more. And so we decided to do rest days every other Friday for the entire summer. And we didn't change our goals, right? But it did give people an opportunity to kind of hunker down and get work done, and then have that every other Friday to look forward to do what they needed to do to digitally disconnect, or maybe use it as a quiet day to catch up on things. That's what I did. But we really tried to make sure that people were getting that space they needed, because we were on all the time now.
Well, there was a period when I think for a lot of companies, it was kind of hands on deck. You're working from home. It's harder to have that sort of, that balance between work and life when you're not, going to the office. You're just kind of coming down to the basement or wherever you're working for a little while. And that really hasn't ended, has it? Now that we're into the fall, this is extending. We don't know what's going to end. A lot of people have kids somewhere doing remote school. how do you balance that need to get stuff done, to continue to drive results while having some empathy and grace with the moment and what people are dealing with?
I mean, I think you have to meet people where they are. That's the first thing. So really understanding and taking the time, if you haven't done so yet, or maybe it's time to do a recheck-in as fall started and we're all back into a new routine, is having the one-to-one time with the core folks, or if you can get to everybody on your team or have your leaders get to them, and have the conversation and really understand, where are people? I mean, there's burnout is a real thing. Well, that's what we're talking about now at our all hands yesterday. Like, how do you deal with burnout, and making sure that people are aware of the services that we have available to us through our benefits programs. And we did a whole contest of the best home office. We gave a stipend for home offices, and then ran a home office contest and recognized that yesterday. So trying to continue to include fun in the equation. But, I do think that it comes down to an individual level and understanding where people are and helping them manage best and giving them what they need in order to succeed. And it's not the same for everybody. No. And so I just think we have to be really, really mindful of every single person and what we can do.
So many variables have changed. We're not even going to get into sort of the external market factors. I really like this conversation about sort of culture and managing sort of the team and sort of the balancing the morale and the productivity, but also just with helping people manage through life. Did you change at all the way you think about benefits and rewards and sort of that component of managing the people on your team and really the broader company as well?
Yeah, we have, and we're continuing to talk about it. I think the good news and the bad news is we are going to change as a world and as a workplace where working from anywhere is always going to need to be an option now. To get the best talent is something that people, I think, are going to have to offer, and which means that opens up that anybody can hire people. So we have to think about our high potential employees and development with employees. And I think I was just reading this Harvard Business article, and it came down to, like, trust is the most important thing. Do they trust leadership, which is, do you have a solid relationship? Do they use good judgment? And those are some of the factors of trust. There was a third one. Hold on, clicking on HBR article. It was trust, judgment, and expertise, and hold on, there we go. Consistency, which is important and hard, like in this world. And so when we look at our perks and benefits, being the best place to work in Atlanta multiple times, being number 7 on Glassdoor, maintaining a 4.9 rating on Glassdoor as you scaled over 500 employees, that's not easy. That's consistency. That's transparency. That's trust. And so what we are looking at is understanding what perks and benefits people really enjoyed. We do an annual survey, and hey, guess what? People liked the free lunch. It was really meaningful to them. And they liked the camaraderie in the office. And so I don't want to spoil the surprise, but we're going to do something that is aligned with what people found valuable in our old perks and how we bring that back, as well as continuing to be innovative in doing things. So we talked about some ideas. I'm not going to give away the spoiler alert because the team doesn't know yet, but do we offer a tutor for or tutors for our children that they can go in for? Should we pay for home cleaning services? Do we want to offer a delivery of meals per month? We already do that for our new parents. Maybe we can help offset the home responsibilities by making it easier on people. So those are some of the things that we tossed around, and also setting expectations that when we do get back to the office, because we're all excited for that, that these are kind of temporary, and then we'll see what we continue to do next. That's the nice thing about perks and benefits. They can change. That's
really cool. Well, we're recording this for posterity and for our Unpredictable Pipeline Hub, but I just checked. We've got a couple dozen people watching here live. So if anyone has a question for Cindy, I've got a couple more questions. Anyone watching live has a question, throw it in here. I'll watch it. We'll throw it up on screen as well. I remember when I was at Microsoft, we would do sometimes sort of offsite events, and they were called morale events, which is really kind of I didn't think of anything of it at the time. You think, okay, morale building isn't an event. It's not going bowling on an afternoon. It's got to be a body of work. It's got to be all these things you do to really show your employees that you care about them. You care about them as individuals. You appreciate their contributions. But I think what I hear a lot from people when they say, oh, we're giving people this day off and we're doing these other benefits and we're increasing paternity leave, they ask about the math. They say, isn't this all really expensive? Like, not only are you getting less from people, but now you're spending more on them. And I mean, you guys have spent a lot of time thinking about this. My sense is those folks are thinking about the math wrong.
Yeah, I think the math, I mean, certain things have different costs, and you'd be shocked that the things that cost the least are actually the things that people appreciate the most.
Yeah.
So, time off is, as an SDR, I mean, we work with SDRs a lot. That has become one of the most popular perks, not the $100 gift card. They want the Friday off to spend their own time, and they'll still get the work done, right? Because they're overachievers, so they'll figure out how to get it done. But we do look at the math. Like we have a CFO that makes us stay responsible, but it's the investment that you make in people. I think that's it, right? Like that they know that you care about them as individuals, that they're appreciated, that they're listened to and heard, and knowing that we're, as a leadership team, trying to do the right thing. And that's what makes us feel good as leaders, when the team recognizes, like, hey, ELT, we know you're working hard and trying to do the right thing, and we appreciate that, because we are, and that's what we care about.
Yeah. So I've got a couple more questions. I know we're going to run on time here, but Amy has a question for you. Amy Marks, thank you for your question. How do you create a good company culture in a remote environment? Like, you lose the ability to do this in person. The company's headquartered in the East Coast. You guys are in Atlanta. You're based on the West Coast. So you've got to do a little bit of that already with your team. But now that everyone's more remote, like, what are some of the keys to building and or maintaining the culture that you want?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it has to start with a good culture. So I'm going to assume that a culture is defined. And when I talk about culture, it's not the words on the wall. It's how you run your company. And so in our interview process, they actually go through a culture interview with people that are selected that are culture carriers in our company. So if you hire the right people that are committed to the culture, and maintaining the culture top to bottom across the peer group, that's the first one. The second is weaving it in. So in our all hands, we do a lofter of the month, which is, it talks about our cultural values. And so we'll reinstill it with that. Sometimes we'll do a highlight on a culture tip and remind people what it's like. For us, I think the other thing in the remote environment is really thinking through your onboarding process. So we completely rethought our remote onboarding process. I was actually talking to a new hire today about it. And so we have a buddy system. My team has a whole onboarding experience that we've created on how to integrate into marketing, and a 30-day integration plan. And so I think that's part of it. The last piece that I'll add to is where you can recreate what it would have been done in in-person environments. And so one of the popular things we do is this app. It's called Donut on Slack, and we call it Coffee with a Lofty. And so that's been a big push for us, is getting as many people as possible in the Donut app. And so it assigns you with different people, and you just go and you have virtual coffee. So we're still using that as an opportunity to make those connections. I have my coffee with Brian on Monday, and I'm looking forward to it. Brian in engineering. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I think you get the lofter of the month. You've got Coffee with a Lofty. I mean, these are all things that, like you said, it's a body of work. It makes it so that it's a company that people really sort of care about. So I want one more question here, and then we're going to run out of time. But so Patrick has a question about new sellers. How do you ramp new sellers in this environment when you can't spend time in front of them coaching, right? You talk about onboarding, and maybe that's easier for someone in marketing, or in operations. But like, what about those sellers? What's been effective? Because you mentioned, like, you guys are going to finish the year having hired like 100+ people. I'm assuming a fair amount of those are on the selling side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a tee up. Thank you, Patrick, for your question. So they still go through the week-long onboarding process and sales training. We just manage it remotely. I think it actually might be 2 weeks now. And then we're fortunate enough that we have enablement people assigned to the different sales teams. And so they do a lot of the coaching. And part of our platform does include a conversation intelligence product. And so really making sure that you're taking the time in that first 30 days of onboarding, because that's what our sales onboarding process is. And they get shadowed the third week by one of the enablement teams, and then they're kind of on their own. And then it's the ongoing coaching and training. So watching their calls, shadowing their calls, giving that coaching and feedback is really important. I think the other thing that I think best in class teams do is they encourage their new hires to watch the recordings of the best performers. right? So really, it's almost like studying the tapes.
Yeah.
And so if you take and get the calls from, if it's your SDR team or your sales team, whoever it might be, and get them to watch that, because then they see the dynamic between the customer and the seller, how they handle objections, how they, do the proposals, discuss pricing, whatever it might be. Just learning through watching others who are really great at it.
Last question we have from the audience, and it's great that we're getting so many people that are watching this and throw these questions. Yeah. Here's a question from John. And I love this one because it's sort of saying, like, when you hire, do you hire for culture fit alone, or can you teach someone through mentoring to be a culture fit? Is it one versus the other? Is it a balance? How does that work?
It's a yes or no, and we stick to it. So if the culture says it's not a fit, we've had a couple be challenged, and then we've gone back and said no. Like that is really important. If they don't feel the culture match right in the beginning, it's so core to who we are that we don't waver on that. And so, but I do think that you can, from a mentoring perspective, that's something totally different, right? So continuing to coach and mentor is super important. And but the culture fit has to be there first.
Yep.
That's non-negotiable.
No, I agree with that. Well, Sydney, this has been awesome. We've gone a little over time, but we had a lot of great questions. So thank you to Amy, to John, to Patrick, and others that we didn't get time to get to, but thank you everyone for joining us. Sydney, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing a different angle of managing this year's unpredictable pipeline.
My pleasure. It was great to be here. Thanks, Matt.